Have you ever locked eyes with someone who wasn't supposed to exist? I mean, really looked into their eyes, felt their presence, while every part of your brain screamed, "This is wrong. This can't be happening." Because I have. And I can tell you, once you've seen something like that, really seen it, there's no unseeing it. No amount of logic, prayer, or therapy can erase what I saw standing at the foot of my bed. That woman, that soaking wet, silent, watching woman. She appeared at exactly 3:24 a.m., and it wasn't a dream. It was room 324 of the Marshall House in Savannah, Georgia. And if you think ghosts aren't real, then let me take you back to the night I stopped believing that too. It was our third wedding anniversary. My wife and I wanted somewhere with charm, history, and a little romance. Savannah seemed perfect. Moss-draped trees, cobblestone streets, warm southern air. We booked a room at the Marshall House, a beautifully restored 19th century hotel right in the historic district. The photos online showed old brick walls, wrought iron balconies, tall windows. It had that old-world elegance and just the tiniest whisper of creepiness. I remember walking into the lobby and instantly feeling the weight of history pressing in from the walls. The air was cool, still, almost reverent. It smelled like polished wood, lavender, and something faintly metallic, like old coins. The kind of place where time doesn't move the same. We were given room 324, top floor, corner unit. The front desk clerk smiled and said, "That one has a lot of character." I didn't think much of it. The room was gorgeous. Tall ceilings, four-poster bed, vintage furniture, an old fireplace that didn't work but added charm. We unpacked, freshened up, and went for dinner on River Street. By the time we returned, it was nearly 11 p.m. The hallway to our room was long and narrow, carpeted in old patterns, lined with faded oil paintings. It was quiet, too quiet. I remember turning the key, opening the door, and feeling a sudden drop in temperature. We both noticed it. We even joked, "Must be those haunted Savannah ghosts trying to cuddle." Around midnight, we were lying in bed watching TV. That's when we heard it. A child laughing, light, playful, innocent, just outside our door. We both froze. Then quick, light footsteps, running, stopping, another giggle. My wife muted the TV. The sound faded into silence. I got up, opened the door, and looked out into the hall. Nobody. No footsteps, no voices, no child, just that long, dim corridor stretching into stillness. I stood there for a moment, listening. All I could hear was the hum of the exit sign and the ticking of an old wall clock. And then, a whisper. Faint, right behind me. I spun around, but the room was empty, just my wife sitting up in bed, eyes wide. "You heard that, right?" she asked. I nodded. We didn't laugh this time. I woke suddenly. There was no sound, no movement, just a pressure in the room, heavy, suffocating. I turned my head. The red digits on the clock blinked, 3:24 a.m. My wife was fast asleep beside me. But I wasn't alone. At the foot of the bed stood a woman. She was tall, thin, dressed in an old nurse's uniform, white but soaked, clinging to her skin. She looked as if she had just climbed out of a flooded river. Water dripped from her fingertips onto the floorboards. And her eyes, empty, but aware. She wasn't looking through me, she was looking at me, and I swear she was waiting for me to wake up. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move, couldn't blink. She just stood there like a statue carved out of water. Then she tilted her head, just slightly. That's when I knew she saw me. She knew I could see her. A moment passed, an eternity in a heartbeat, and then she vanished. Not disappeared, not walked away. She melted, like mist evaporating in sunlight, and the room breathed again. I gasped for air, sat up, shaking. My wife stirred, mumbling something. But I couldn't speak. I just stared at the foot of the bed, where she had been. And there, on the wooden floor, was a puddle. Still wet, still shimmering. The next morning, I barely touched my coffee. I approached the front desk, trying to sound casual. "Hey, is room 324 haunted?" The woman behind the counter didn't even flinch. She gave a slow nod and said, "You saw her, didn't you?" I just stared. She continued, "That room was part of the surgical ward during the Civil War. The building was a hospital before it was ever a hotel." She leaned closer. "People see her, the wet nurse, always at 3:24 a.m., always watching. We've tried cleansing. Nothing works." I didn't know what to say. She just looked at me with sad eyes and said, "She never left. She watches over the ones who don't make it." We checked out that morning. Neither of us said much, but I know she felt it too. We never went back to Savannah. I haven't stayed in a historic hotel since. But even now, years later, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night at 3:24 a.m. every time. And when I do, I hold my breath because I can still feel her. The weight of her stare, the cold air, the silence. She left something behind in that room, and part of it followed me home. Some places never forget, some souls never move on, and some rooms remember everything. So if you ever find yourself in Savannah and you get handed a brass key to room 324, ask for another room, and whatever you do, don't open your eyes at 3:24 a.m. If you ever find yourself deep inside Hockomock Swamp and hear someone calling your name, don't answer. If you see a pale woman gliding across the water, don't follow her gaze. And whatever you do, don't look at her face. Because once you do, she won't ever stop looking back at you. I should know, because I looked, and she followed me all the way out of that God-forsaken swamp. It started like any other October morning. Cold, still. A thin skin of frost had formed on my truck's windshield when I parked near the trailhead. I'd been hunting ducks in and around the Hockomock Swamp for years. It's a weird place, yeah, but I respected it. The Wampanoag called it the place where spirits dwell. That should have been enough to keep me away, but I always thought it was just folklore. Until that day. That day, the swamp felt different. The sun barely broke through the clouds. Mist curled low and thick along the water. No birds called, no insects chirped, just quiet. And I made the mistake of stepping in. A few hours in, I hadn't seen a single duck, which was strange. I was standing in ankle-deep water, reeds up to my waist, when I got this sudden sinking feeling, like I was being watched. You ever feel eyes on you but can't figure out where they are? It was like that. My breath caught in my throat. I scanned the tree line, and that's when I saw her. She was maybe 50 yards out, just beyond the cattails. A woman, floating above the swamp water. Her skin was so pale it almost glowed. Her arms hung limp, except for one hand which was raised, pointing at me. Her head tilted ever so slightly, and then she vanished. Just disappeared, like she'd never been there at all. I tried to tell myself it was just the fog playing tricks on me. Maybe I saw a heron, maybe my mind was wandering. But when I turned to head back to camp, nothing looked familiar. The path I came in on? Gone. The markings I made on the trees? Vanished. I checked my compass. The needle spun like it was drunk. Every direction led me back to the same patch of water. It was like I was stuck in a loop. The swamp wasn't just hiding the way out, it was changing itself around me. That's when I heard it. Not footsteps, not an animal, a voice. Soft, whispering, like wind passing through a keyhole. At first I couldn't make out the words, but then I heard it, Greg. My name. Whispered like it came from inside my own skull. I turned, and she was there. Not far this time, maybe 20 feet away. Floating. Her face was fully visible now, sunken eyes, skin stretched tight over bones, mouth slightly open like she was gasping, and still pointing at me, that smile. I'll never forget that smile. It was like she knew something I didn't. I ran. I don't even remember deciding to. My body just moved. Branches snapped, water splashed. I tripped, fell, kept running. But every time I thought I was gaining ground, I'd end up back where I started. Same black water, same trees, and she was always a little closer than before. I could feel her breath now, cold as death. Every time I blinked, she moved. I started to realize I wasn't lost in the swamp. I was being herded. She was guiding me somewhere. I stumbled into a clearing I'd never seen before. At the center were stones arranged in a perfect spiral. Each was covered in carvings, symbols I didn't recognize. Eyes, circles, hands. And then it hit me. I'd heard a story once. A local Wampanoag elder told my grandfather about a spirit watcher, a pale guardian of sacred lands. She doesn't protect the swamp from people. She protects people from the swamp. If you enter without permission, she takes you, forever. And I had wandered right into her altar. I had one thing left, a pouch of tobacco. My grandfather always said spirits respected offerings. My hands trembled as I placed it on the center stone. I whispered every prayer I could remember, and the moment the pouch touched the rock, the fog recoiled. The whispering stopped. and for the first time in hours, I could hear the wind. I turned around and a clear path had opened. The swamp had let me go. I walked, didn't run. I was too scared to break the silence. As I stepped out of the swamp, I felt the weight lift from my chest. But just before I crossed the tree line, I turned, and she was there, one last time, watching from the mist, not moving, not smiling, just watching. And then she faded into the fog like she was never there. But I know better. She was there, and if I ever step into that swamp again, she will be waiting. I never told anyone the full story until now. Not my friends, not even my wife, because once you say it out loud, it feels real again. But I'll tell you this, the Bridgewater Triangle is real, Hockomock Swamp is real, and she is real. So if you're ever hunting near those waters and you hear a voice whisper your name, don't look back, just run. If this story chilled you to the bone, hit that like button and share it with someone who loves the strange and unexplained. And if you've ever seen anything out there, leave your story in the comments below. Subscribe for more real horror tales every week. And remember, some places are forgotten for a reason. I still remember the first time it spoke to me. Not whispered, spoke. It was a cold October night in 1992, and I had just turned 15. I was lying in bed in my small upstairs bedroom in rural Kentucky when I heard it. A voice, a low, broken male voice coming from inside my closet, and it said, "I used to live here." Just 5 words, that's it. But the way it was said, like he didn't quite remember what those words meant, like he wasn't alive when he said them. That closet, that thing behind the door, it had been whispering to me for months before that. But that night, that was the first time I realized something was truly deeply wrong. We moved into that old farmhouse in the spring of '92. It was the kind of place that had history buried in its bones. You could feel it in the walls, the creaking floorboards, the peeling wallpaper, the faint scent of mold and ash that never really went away. It sat on the edge of a large, empty field just outside of Harlan County. No neighbors for miles. The kind of isolation that feels peaceful when you visit and suffocating when you live there. I remember asking my dad why the house was so cheap. He just laughed and said, "Nobody wants to live in the middle of nowhere, that's all." But I saw the way my mom looked at him. She knew something. My room was on the 2nd floor, tucked in the far back corner of the house. It had one small window that overlooked the field and a closet that stretched deeper than it had any right to. That closet, it always felt wrong. It wasn't just the way it looked, it was the way it felt, like it breathed. Even in the daytime, I didn't like being near it. I used to open it real quick, throw in my clothes, and slam it shut again. Every time I opened that door, it felt like I was disturbing something, like I was letting something look back at me. The whispers started about a week after we moved in. It was always around 2 or 3 in the morning, when everything was silent and still. I'd be half asleep, drifting in and out when I'd hear it. Just a soft, rasping murmur, like a man mumbling under his breath. I couldn't make out the words. It was just noise, but it came from the closet. Only from the closet. The first few times I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was the wind, or old pipes, or maybe I was dreaming. But dreams don't make you sit bolt upright in the middle of the night with your heart pounding and sweat pouring down your back. I started sleeping with the lamp on, every night, but even with the light, I could feel it, watching me, waiting. One night, the whispers were louder than usual, constant, buzzing, laughing. I snapped, I grabbed a shoe and threw it at the closet door. Bang! The noise stopped, and then, as I sat there in the silence, heart hammering, I heard something new, a laugh. Not a loud one, not human, just a low, broken chuckle. And it wasn't coming from behind the door anymore. It was inside the room. I told my parents, tried to explain that something was in my room, in the closet, watching me, talking to me. My dad rolled his eyes, said I was watching too many horror movies. Mom said it was stress, a new house, a new school. Nobody believed me, and maybe that's what made it worse, being alone with it, knowing I was the only one who heard it. And whatever it was, it knew that too. Then came the night the closet opened on its own. It was just after 3 a.m. I woke up because the air felt wrong, thick, like the room was filled with smoke I couldn't see. I looked at the closet, and I watched, frozen, as the door creaked open, slowly. No breeze, no draft, and there, just inside the doorway, a pale hand reached around the edge, thin, bony, almost translucent. It twitched once, then slid back into the darkness, and the door slammed shut on its own. That was the night it spoke clearly. I couldn't scream, couldn't move, just lay there, eyes locked on that door, and then I heard it. Clear, cold, human and not. I used to live here. The voice didn't sound angry. It sounded lost, like a memory of a man, not a man himself. But I knew right then that whatever it was, it had once been something, someone. And it wasn't done with this place, or with me. We moved 2 years later. When we packed up, I didn't say goodbye to the room or the closet. I just avoided it, like always. But right before we left, I went up one last time. I stood in the doorway. The closet was wide open, and inside it I saw him. A man. Thin, barefoot, wearing what looked like old hospital clothes. His skin looked like ash, and his head was tilted too far to the side, like something had broken. He was whispering. I shut the door, and I never opened it again. Years later, in my 30s, I met a guy at a bar who grew up nearby. When I told him where I used to live, he froze. He asked, "You know what that place was before, right?" Turns out the farmhouse was built on the grounds of Cold Creek Asylum, a mental institution that burned to the ground in the late 60s. Most patients escaped, but not all. One man died, locked in his cell, no name, no family, nothing but ashes. And that cell? It was in the exact same spot where my closet stood. I haven't lived in that house in decades, but sometimes, when I'm alone at night, when everything is quiet, I still hear him. That same voice, not from a closet, not from a room, from inside me. Just 5 words, always the same. I used to live here, and maybe now, he never left. Some closets hold more than just clothes. Some doors, once opened, should never be closed again. If your home has cold spots, strange noises, or a voice that speaks only when you're alone, maybe it's not the house that's haunted. Maybe it's you. I took the photo at exactly 2:03 a.m. No filters, no reflections, no one behind me, just my hallway lit by a single lamp. But when I looked at the photo a few seconds later, there she was. A pale woman in an old-fashioned black dress, her eyes sunk deep into her face, staring right at me from inside the mirror. She wasn't there when I took it, I swear to God, and now, she's watching me from every mirror in the house. After my grandmother passed away last year, I inherited her house in Charleston, South Carolina. It was a beautiful old property, a classic colonial-style home from the 1800s, with creaky wooden floors, high ceilings, and walls that smelled like old books and dust. It felt like time had stopped inside those walls. But more than the house, she left me something else. Something that had been in our family for over a century. A mirror. 7 feet tall, framed in dark mahogany, carved with curling vines and tiny roses. It had always been in her hallway. I remember being 5 or 6 and feeling nervous just walking past it. It always looked like it was hiding something, but I never thought much of it until I brought it into my own home. The first few nights were uneventful. I placed the mirror in the main hallway, opposite the staircase. But on the 3rd night, as I walked past it in the dark, something caught my eye. I turned and looked into the mirror. My reflection stared back, but it was off. Not scary at first, just wrong. The angle of my head was slightly different. My arms hung stiff, like they didn't belong to me. My face was fuzzy, like it had been erased and redrawn. And my eyes, they weren't looking at me. They were looking just past me. I blinked. The image snapped back to normal. I laughed it off, told myself it was just a trick of the shadows. But that night, for the first time in years, I slept with the hallway door closed. Later that week, I got curious. I decided to take a picture of the mirror, just to see if the weird reflections showed up on camera. It was around 2 a.m. The house was completely silent. I stood at the end of the hallway, pointed my phone at the mirror, and took a photo. Nothing seemed unusual. I didn't hear anything, didn't feel anything. But when I looked at the picture, my heart dropped. There was someone else in the mirror, a woman I didn't recognize. She was standing behind me, but not behind me in real life, only inside the mirror. She wore a black Victorian morning dress, her skin gray and tight around the bones, her eyes sunken into her skull, and she was staring right at me. That night I woke up at exactly 2:03 a.m. No alarm, no noise, just the sensation of something calling me. I sat up in bed and listened. At first I thought it was the wind, but then I heard it. Whispers. Not in my room, not outside, inside the hallway. I slowly opened my door. My hallway was dark, except for a pale glow around the mirror. It was fogged up completely, like someone had just breathed all over it, and there were handprints, pressed against the inside. Long, narrow fingers, scraping, dragging. As I stepped closer, I swear I saw something shift behind the glass. The next day, I contacted a local historian. Her name was Virginia Maddox. She specialized in Charleston's haunted artifacts. When I described the mirror to her, she went silent. Then she asked if I could bring it to her. When she saw it, her face drained of color. She traced it back to an 1800s home once owned by a woman named Elizabeth Whitmore. Elizabeth died suddenly in her sleep in 1874. But what chilled me to the bone was what Virginia said next. She told me that in old Southern tradition, when someone dies, you're supposed to cover every mirror in the house, because if you don't, their soul could get trapped inside. And according to her research, the mirrors in Elizabeth's home were never covered. After that, everything changed. It felt like something had been unleashed. The mirror no longer just reflected, it followed. I'd see flickers in the corners of my vision, shadows moving when no one was there. Sometimes I'd walk past and see her again, Elizabeth, closer and clearer than before. Once, I swear, I saw her lips move, whispering something I couldn't hear. And another night, her hand was pressed against the inside of the glass, like she wanted out. One night, I came home from work and froze. The mirror was no longer against the wall. It had been moved, angled just slightly, facing the front door. No one else was home. The doors were locked. I tried to push it back, but it felt heavier than it should have, like something was holding it in place. And as I stood there, I saw her again, closer, clearer. She smiled. That night I had the worst dream of my life. I was standing inside the mirror, but everything was reversed, twisted. The hallway was stretched out endlessly, warped and distorted like a funhouse. The colors bled into each other. Elizabeth stood at the far end. She pointed to me, then pointed at the glass. Then she opened her mouth and screamed, but no sound came out, just darkness. I set up a camera to record the mirror overnight. I didn't expect anything, but at exactly 2:03 a.m. the recording stopped. I watched the footage frame by frame. At first, nothing. Then, the mirror began to ripple, like water. A hand emerged, then an arm, reaching, grasping, and then the screen went black. The historian told me the only way to stop it was to cover the mirror completely. No light, no reflection. I waited until just before sunrise. My hands shook as I draped the black cloth over the glass. As the last corner dropped, I heard a sharp, piercing scream from inside the mirror, then silence. The house finally felt still. I haven't uncovered it since. I keep it locked in the guest room, door sealed shut. But sometimes, late at night, I hear tapping. Soft, repetitive, like fingernails on glass. And once or twice, I've caught a glimpse of my reflection in a dark window or screen. And it doesn't move the way I do, because I don't think it's me anymore. I think she's still watching and waiting to be let out again. Have you ever smelled something that shouldn't be there? I mean, really shouldn't be there. Like the scent of fresh roses drifting through a sealed-up house in the middle of a Minnesota winter? Because I have. And what started with that smell ended with my family fleeing in the middle of the night, leaving behind clothes, photos, even my little sister's doll. We never went back. Not after we learned who Sarah was and what she wanted. Let me tell you what happened at the Lakehouse. It's been over 30 years, and I still get chills thinking about that place. It was the winter of 1986 when we moved into the Lakehouse. My dad had inherited it from a cousin we barely knew, a guy named Roy who passed suddenly and left the property to us. To be honest, I think my parents saw it as a blessing, a chance to get out of Minneapolis, escape the noise and the stress, start fresh. It took us nearly 6 hours to drive up, endless trees, long, icy roads. And when we finally turned down the snow-covered drive that led to the house, we saw it, old but solid. Wide front porch, peeling paint, the kind of place you'd expect to see in a postcard or a ghost story. The inside was dusty, but beautiful. Wood-paneled walls, stone fireplace, old brass fixtures. There was even a piano in the parlor, though its keys were badly out of tune. But what I remember most was the smell. It hit me the moment I stepped inside. Roses. Sweet, rich, unmistakable, like a garden in full bloom. But outside, there was 3 feet of snow. My little sister Emily was 5. Bright-eyed, curious, always talking. She took to the house quickly, started playing pretend games in the hallways, setting up her toys near the windows. But after about a week, she stopped talking to us as much. She'd sit by the front window for hours, staring out at the frozen lake, whispering. At first we figured she was talking to her dolls. But one night, as I walked past the hallway, I stopped. She was whispering. And someone was whispering back. It was low. Too low to make out the words. But it wasn't the wind, and it wasn't any of us. When I asked her who she was talking to, she said, without looking away from the window, "Sarah, she says she used to live here." I froze. My parents dismissed it, of course, said it was just an imaginary friend. But from then on, I started noticing things. Like how her room was always the coldest in the house, or how the rose smell got stronger when she was near. Minnesota winters are brutal, sure, but this house had cold spots that didn't make sense. You'd be walking from the kitchen to the den, and suddenly it felt like stepping into a freezer. I'm not exaggerating. One step it was normal, the next you could see your breath. Dad tried to blame the heating, but the thermostat was working, and it was always the same places. The hallway outside Emily's room, the basement, and the attic door. One morning, Mom woke up with scratches on her arm. 3 long marks, like fingernails, but too wide for Emily's little hands. Then Dad's toolbox vanished completely. We searched for hours, finally found it in the basement shower, and everything inside was soaking wet. There was no plumbing down there, no reason for that to happen. That's when Mom said it. I think something's wrong with this house. A few weeks in, we decided to clean the attic. Most of the boxes were full of junk, moth-eaten clothes, yellowed books, broken lamps. But then I found an old leather-bound album inside a trunk, black and white photos, people standing in front of the Lakehouse, smiling, unaware of the decades to come. And then I found her. She was standing on the dock, white dress, barefoot, long black hair hanging damp over her shoulders. She wasn't smiling. Just staring. I flipped the photo over, and my heart dropped. Written in faded pencil, Sarah, summer 1934, last photo before the accident. I took it downstairs, showed my mom. Her face turned white. She turned to Emily and asked, "Sweetie, the Sarah you talked to, what does she look like?" Emily smiled and said, "She wears a white dress and her hair is wet. She's sad sometimes, but she likes me." I felt sick. Because I knew it wasn't a coincidence. Emily wasn't making it up. She was talking to Sarah. That night, things escalated. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in Emily's room in under 5 minutes. Mom heard humming coming from inside the walls. We all heard the piano play 3 notes, even though nobody had touched it in years. The next morning, we found rose petals, fresh ones, scattered across the front porch. And the lake was no longer still. It was steaming. Even though it was 20 below zero, something had changed. Sarah wasn't just whispering anymore. She was moving inside the house. We didn't know what else to do, so Dad contacted a paranormal research team out of Duluth. 2 investigators arrived, Marty and Joanne. They were calm, professional, until they weren't. Joanne refused to enter the basement, said the air felt wrong. Marty brought in an EMF reader. It spiked red as soon as they stepped near Emily's room. That night, they left a recorder running in the parlor. When they played it back, they caught a voice, clear as day. It whispered, "Why did you take my home?" Joanne packed up immediately. She looked at my parents and said, "You need to get your children out of here, tonight." That night, we packed, threw clothes in bags, left dishes in the sink. We didn't even wait for morning. As the car pulled away, Emily turned in her seat. She looked up at the house and said softly, "She's sad we're leaving. She's waving goodbye." I turned to look. and I'll never forget what I saw. Sarah was in the upstairs window, soaking wet, hand pressed against the glass, smiling, and behind her the mirror in the hallway shattered. We heard it from the driveway. We never went back. The lake house sat empty for years. Eventually it was torn down, but locals still talk about it. Some claim they still see her standing by the water's edge at dusk, or smell roses blowing in on a windless night. But here's the part that still keeps me up. 2 years ago, I found one of Emily's old drawings in a box, a crayon picture, our family in front of the lake house, but in the corner, a woman. Tall, long black hair, standing in the lake, no eyes. Just a smile, and above her head, Emily had written one word. Sarah. They say spirits fade with time, but not all of them. Some are bound to a place, to a feeling, to unfinished sorrow. So if you ever find yourself by a frozen lake in northern Minnesota and you smell roses on the wind, turn back, don't look toward the water, because if you do, you might just see her, and she never stops watching. Thanks for watching Sinister Horror Diaries. Until next time, stay safe, stay scared, stay sinister.